Welcome to the Golden Gems podcast. Today we're taking a deep dive into Bill Hicks, the comedian who used psychedelics and radical honesty to critique American consumer culture. You know, when we talk about dangerous comedy today, we're usually talking about people who've really successfully monetized that rebellion.
Oh, yeah. The stadium comic.
Exactly, the ones with the nine-figure streaming deals. But the material on Bill Hicks, who died broke in 1994, it suggests something else entirely. It kind of proves that real artistic danger, the kind that attacks the machine at its core, well, that rarely gets a corporate contract.
And that's why our mission here is to really dig into what that danger was.
So where do we even start?
I think we have to look past the label of comedian. I mean, fundamentally, Hicks was more of a rogue sociologist.
Rogue sociologist, I like that.
Yeah, he didn't use the mic for, airline food jokes. He used it like a surgical tool for deprogramming. His whole body of work was this relentless attack on what he saw as the totalitarian mind control of American consumer culture.
And if you look around today, that's only gotten worse.
It's amplified, absolutely.
Okay, so let's unpack that. The origin story. William Melvin Hicks, born 61, grew up in, the very rigid Southern Baptist middle class of Houston.
Right. And the conflict that started in him wasn't just like typical teenage rebellion.
No, it was deeper. It was a clash over what truth even is. You had the absolute certainty of the authority figures around him versus his own, innate needs to just ask questions.
And by his early teens, he was already taking that structure apart.
He was dismantling it. It wasn't just disagreeing. One source calls it a forensic cross-examination of everything he was taught. He just understood, I think, that unshakable certainty is where curiosity goes to die.
Which is also where comedy goes to die.
Exactly.
And that leads us to maybe the single most important story of his early life. 1978, his parents are worried about him, the 17-year-old skeptic, so they take him to a psychoanalyst.
In this one session, it becomes this huge psychological turning point. Because the analyst, after hearing him out, basically gives him the ultimate permission slip. He says, you can continue coming if you want to, but it's them, not you.
Imagine hearing that. It just validated his deepest suspicion, didn't it?
Totally. The insanity wasn't inside him.
It was systemic, it was external, and that armed him, it gave him the justification he needed to just reject the whole mainstream program.
And he channels that certainty that the world is crazy, not him, into the Texas outlaw comic scene.
With guys like Sam Kinison, yeah. A very visceral, raw style of comedy that was the total opposite of safe observational humor. For them, the stage was a pulpit.
But it wasn't a straight line from there. The mid-'80s, you have the classic spiral, alcohol, cocaine.
A near-extinction event, as some sources call it. He pulls out of it by 86, gets sober, but that's not the real shift.
No. The real shift, the monumental one, was a metaphysical experience, 1987.
The Harmonic Convergence. This is where he and Kevin Booth, his collaborator, deliberately tried to punch a hole through the fabric of reality.
With a heroic dose of psilocybin mushrooms.
And he comes out of that with the philosophy that would drive the rest of his work.
It's a dense quote, but it's so central. All matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration.
That we're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There is no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we are the imagination of ourselves.
Okay, let's stop there because it sounds like New Age stuff. But it wasn't.
It's not New Age fluff at all. That quote is the blueprint for how he weaponizes comedy.
How so?
Well, if reality is just a subjective shared hallucination, like he experienced it, then the American dream, buy more, fear more, comfort, that's just a toxic strain of the hallucination.
Manufactured by people who profit from that fear.
Exactly. So the war isn't political anymore. It becomes a war for the human imagination itself.
And that's where the idea of the ride comes from.
That's it. Life is a choice between fear and love. If you choose fear, you're buying into the consumerist delusion. If you choose love, you recognize the interconnectedness.
Which is why he was such an advocate for psychedelics. They were tools to help you see the code, not just the illusion.
It's like his joke about music. If you burned every album made by a high musician, you'd only be left with Ringo Starr and the Raycon of singers.
Right. It shows how important he thought that expanded consciousness was to culture.
And yet, we have to talk about the huge contradiction in his life.
The nicotine addiction.
The crippling, lifelong nicotine addiction. For a guy so committed to transcendence, he couldn't shake it. He even called it filling the potholes in his soul. It's a reminder that he was still, just a human being.
That contradiction makes his work even more fascinating, I think. You can trace the evolution right through his specials. You start with Sane Man in '89.
That's the baseline. It's him right at that intersection of the old outlaw comic and the new philosopher, arguing he's the only sane person in the asylum.
Then by 1990, with Dangerous, it gets much sharper.
Oh yeah, he's explicitly provocative now. He goes after fundamentalist religion, and crucially, he says the war on drugs isn't about safety. It's about consciousness control.
He's forcing the audience to choose.
And then his success in the UK just pours gasoline on the fire.
Yeah.
They got him over there.
Which fuels Relentless in 1991. And this is where he just completely gives up on winning over mainstream America.
This is where you get the famous anti-marketing routine. And it's so important to get the weight behind it. When he tells people in advertising to kill themselves.
It wasn't just for shock value.
No. He genuinely saw them as Satan's little helpers. He believed their work was an immoral act against humanity because they were engineering the toxic hallucination, lowering the collective IQ.
Seeing it as a moral failing, not just a nuisance, that's what made him so threatening.
And the culmination of all this is Revelations in '92, recorded in London.
In this, ancient, ruined temple setting.
Yeah, the setting says it all. This is where you get the clearest version of the "it's just a ride" philosophy, and it ends with that beautiful benediction. The guy on acid who sees the truth, and the cop who thinks he's having a bad trip.
And Hicks' point is,
the cop, trapped in fear, is the one having the bad trip. A complete inversion of how we see things.
And he was still pushing, wasn't he? Arizona Bay, which came out after he died, was him trying to move beyond stand-up, merging comedy and music.
The whole metaphor of LA sliding into the ocean, it was a plea for a cleansing, to wash away the superficiality.
That relentless drive just makes the tragedy of 1993 so much harder to take.
Yeah. Diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in June. He was 31.
And he kept it almost completely secret, joking about his gift of cancer while still touring, even as his body was failing.
And then in the middle of all that, you get the Letterman incident, October 1st, 1993.
The ultimate confirmation of all his theories. His set of critique of pro-life hypocrisy and commercialized religion, it gets pre-approved, and then they cut the whole thing.
They censored him as he was literally dying. The machine silencing him when his voice was most urgent.
And his response was that final manifesto, that 39-page letter to John Lair.
Invoking Shiva the Destroyer, saying the comedian's job is to be a flame-toppling idols no matter what they are. That's the definitive statement on his integrity.
His last show was January 6, 1994, at Caroline's. And his last words on stage were just, "I can't do this anymore."
And he was gone a month and a half later, 32 years old.
But the legacy, it just wouldn't die. It was really kept alive by the music world at first, right?
Absolutely. The band Tool was huge for that. They dedicated their album Enema to him in '96, sampled his voice, wove his philosophy right into their music. That made him an icon for a whole new generation.
And then years later comes the institutional apology, 2009.
David Letterman. He invites Hicks's mother on the show, finally airs the lost routine, and calls the censorship a crime.
An unbelievable moment of validation. It basically proved Hicks's point. He wasn't controversial. The culture just needed 15 years to catch up.
But that brings us to the real tension for you, the listener, today in 2026. It's the prophet versus the prophet paradox.
Right. Did Hicks liberate comedy? Or did he just write the blueprint for guys like Joe Rogan, Doug Stanhope, Bill Burr?
To profit from the exact same rage he expressed for free. He died broke, hating corporate America.
And now the biggest names in his style get rich taking corporate money to deliver that critique. It's a really uncomfortable truth.
And you have to layer on the modern reevaluations. Younger critics looking at the aggressive masculine energy in some of his work.
Which is a fair conversation to have.
It is, but the counterpoint is that a lot of that was a character. He was holding a mirror up to the frat boy culture he hated. The intellectual work underneath the rage is what saves it.
And then you have the ultimate irony, the final twist.
The commodification, a campaign for a statue in Houston, a Legends of Laughter action figure in 2024.
You can buy a doll of the man who told advertisers to kill themselves.
That's the paradox we're left with. Hicks's gospel, that we are all one consciousness. It's on T-shirts now. It's quoted in TikToks.
Stripped of all its revolutionary context.
So did he break the illusion? Or did the illusion just get better at marketing? Did it learn how to monetize his ghost? The genius of his work is that even now he forces you to ask that question.
Thank you for listening to the Golden Gems podcast. We'll be back next time with another deep dive. Until then, keep exploring, keep listening, and keep celebrating the power of uncompromising voices.